Okay, hello and welcome everyone. My name is Peter Robinson. This is the Ethereum Engineering Group Meetup. And today we're going to have three groups of people talking about three companies. So we've got Louise Mercer, who is going to talk about Everledger. And then we've got Dan and Nils, who are going to talk about Caleb and Brown. And either Charles or myself are going to talk about ConsenSys. And so what you should do is put your questions in chat. If you're watching this on YouTube, just put your questions as comments, and I'm sure we will address them, or one of the speakers will address them. So without further ado, Louise, over to you. So present slides or just talk, however you wish to do it.
Sure, thank you very much, Peter. Now, can everyone see my screen okay? Oh, hang on, it didn't look like it worked. Try again. Okay, can you see a screen with a big lake and mountains on it? Excellent.
Yes,
Good
beautiful
news.
mountains.
All right, today, I haven't been to this meetup before, and first things first, you're not going to hear too much in terms of Ethereum tech, and you might hear kids in the background or garbage trucks that I'm currently hearing. The joys of working from home. I'm Chief Experience Officer at Everledger and not Chief Technical Officer. So if you've got queries, I'll do my best today, but you may not get the best answers from me. And I can just see the connection's a bit unstable, so I'll go off video for a short time as well. All right, so what I'm going to do today, I'm going to take you through a little bit about who we are as a company, our architecture, how we're deployed, and some of the lessons learned from the experience so far. Everledger's been around for approximately coming up to 7 years now, and our purpose and vision has been pretty consistent through all that time, as you'd hope, which is to really create trustworthy, transparent supply chains where if you need to trace an item back to its material source or through to its finished good, if you need to understand with certainty or with confidence the verifiability of claims that are being made about that product, where it came from, its chain of custody, sustainability claims or compliance claims, that's what we're in the business of doing. And really in doing so, we've not been building an app that would be simple and great and probably a whole lot easier than what we have embarked upon, which is really rails of trade and infrastructure that's supporting pretty complex supply chains who have had some pretty difficult histories, of obfuscation or consumer uncertainty or, nefarious actors, etc., and helping them to showcase their story, to do so in a way that that others can have more confidence that they're buying what it says on the tin. All right, this is a busy slide, but it's us at a glance. So as I said, we're really in that business of substantiating supply chain claims, origin, sustainability, footprint, and compliance. Wherever standards can come forth to verify those or document efforts towards those. We're really passionately driven by sustainability development goals and how businesses and supply chains can reach a scope 3, really being able to substantiate not only their own, but also upstream and downstream participants, and how they're contributing towards certain ESG outcomes. So how do we do this? We do this through inventory that's tracked on blockchain. We've got a number of APIs for B2B and B2C e-commerce, helping provenance show up to inform decision-making where it matters most. We have web apps that support a consumer experience that could be that consumer engaging with the product pre-sale on the rack or online. It can also materialize as customers claiming ownership of those assets, and that really takes you into down here the Web3 peer-to-peer community creation and NFTs. We have a lot that we do and with partners in intelligent product authentication, and that's some of the things are down here, but that can be everything from at a data level of understanding the trueness of what is this asset, what is its chain of custody. It can be intelligent labeling and tagging, the simplicity of QR through to much more secure NFC tags and the like, and scientific traces and markers as well in instances of dealing with perhaps more fungible materials like wool and minerals and metals. And where this is building towards is circular economy marketplace. So being able to not only understand the primary production and life cycle of materials into assets, but also the decomposition. You know, how can we reduce landfill in apparel waste? How can we understand the recycling of electric vehicle batteries so that those component parts are reused rather than mined as primary materials? We've been global since day dot, which is wonderful and exhausting. And we have, you know, really privileged to work with a number of amazing customers around the world, predominantly in the space of, started out in diamonds and gemstones, and that's what we're probably better known for. But now in apparel, wine and spirits, art, electric vehicle batteries, critical minerals, you know, wool, all sorts of primary and secondary materials and products. So if I just give you a snapshot then of the services, compliance is a big one. How do you help companies to demonstrate their compliance, achieve compliance, keep compliant? And that can be a moving river. Sometimes compliance is relevant at a single point in time. So how can you relate an asset that, you know, might have been a bottle of wine or whiskey cast for some time back to the original producer, and were they compliant in some regard when they produced it? Authentication, so building out digital identities of the objects themselves, RFIDs and NFCs playing a part in here, but also NFTs. So how do you take, you know, what's been such a burgeoning space in non-fungible tokens, anchor it into the real life product, and, you know, give credence to something that's being traded on top of an asset that can account, you know, for its authenticity, whether it's opened or not, and those sorts of things. Commerce, so helping those validated product claims and post-consumer engagement to show up real time and where it matters for consumers. And of course, data insights. So this creates a, you know, real interesting spectrum of insights and analytics. Did that wine distribution that went in Southeast Asia go to its intended recipients or not? You know, where are those electric vehicle batteries now, and are they in the right spot depending on their life cycle? What are the different consumer insights about engaging with diamonds that are showing up with Russian provenance at the moment, you know, compared to those that aren't? So one use case here is really of our capture solution, and capture is where we help those businesses and B2B sourcing and trading take place. So this is where businesses are banking in information about their entities, their assets, and the chain of custody. And other entities, maybe a diamond retailer, for instance, is sourcing diamonds that meet their requirements for ethical sourcing or responsible jewelry certificate or met the Kimberley process, etc. So they can trade with suppliers who match, you know, their requirements and perhaps their own branding and ethical positioning that they're putting to market. This example is from Alexander McQueen with their streetwear apparel collection. This has been in market now for some time. You can jump onto mymcq.com if you want to participate in the community. But these guys were really pioneering, and I think well ahead of Web3 time, and understood fundamentally that they could create a collection with collectors, not sort of seasonal objects that were bought and sold and, you know, ended up in landfill. So in creating these branded NFC tags, you'll see these sort of big white labels. They're celebrating all the artisans on there and all the co-creators in that experience, enabling customers to engage with that product. A simple tap of their phone brings up the narrative of its authenticity and how it was produced. Claim ownership of it in a secure way once it's purchased. Add the digital twin into their world. Sorry, kids.
Mom,
Yes, yes. I did warn you. Yes, you can. Please go. we go. All right. Another example of wine and spirits, enabling persistent digital identities and NFTs on verifiable assets. So, you know, as these things accumulate in value, again, how can you understand the chain of custody, you know, that it was properly stored? How do you connect with the original distillers, etc., to understand its, you know, its tasting notes or ideal recipes or other information about the processes that it went through? I'll spin through these kind of quickly so I can get to the technical juicy bits, and I know you're waiting for. A battery passport for secure sharing of data on electric vehicle batteries. Again, really understanding these items over what's a relatively longer life cycle, so that recyclers, refurbishers, etc., can know, was that car involved in a crash? You know, is the battery compromised in any way? Should it be refurbished, or should it actually be recycled and broken down into its constituent parts? How can that then flow back into the life cycle of manufacture for those batteries to continue without primary mining occurring again? And wool and apparel, this is an example of deployment that we've been doing with ConsenSys with Australian wool, and tracing that all the way through. This is a WeChat deployment here to demonstrate the narrative of where did this come from, and how does it support the apparel brand telling its own story of origin, and enable people to engage with that story. You know, where did that primary material came from? What was the animal welfare conditions under which it was produced? Can it be traced? You know, is it 100% Australian pure new wool garment, or is it blended? You know, all of those sorts of things really help sit beneath accreditations and compliance and standards within the market, so that these things are not greenwashing or nice to have, or you know, vague claims, but actually specific and verifiable. So for Everledger to really deliver a lot of these products and solutions, we've had to focus in a good many years on building out infrastructure that's right from upstream primary production, you know, all the way through a supply chain and chain of custody through to end consumer propositions. So within that is a lot of pieces of the puzzle around the digital identification of assets. How do you put assets together? How do you disaggregate them? How do you identify them? How is that identity persistent throughout a life cycle and a chain of custody, especially when transformation events take place? How does that provenance narrative get displayed, and to whom and at what part of the process? What is private about that, which might be invoices, but is still needed to verify the chain of custody? What might be permissioned about that? What might be public about that? How can some items be recognised as, you know, available for trade, others stored privately in vaults? How can that configuration exist, you know, for different parties in that supply chain with different needs? How can third-party substantiations and accreditations show up in that, in those trading moments in meaningful ways? Sourcing and searching, you know, you find partners and suppliers who are trading in the goods that you're looking for, and again, how can that be managed and governed effectively to meet the right permissioning requirements? You know, there might be a primary producer that sells to a wholesaler, that sells to a retailer, and they're not looking for that retailer to then go to the primary producer and buy directly, but they still want to attest to what has happened upstream. So helping to manage, you know, current and existing supply chains, but also to form new ones. And we've certainly seen that through the last couple of years of COVID. You know, things do not always flow the manner and direction that you expect. How can that support trade at smart contracts and engines levels? How can sustainability and compliance exist within this, and how can governance, security and interoperability support the deployments of these, you know, at micro levels of little artisans through to, you know, large deployments and multiple assets with significant trade volumes. It's been a beast, frankly, to get to this point. So in terms of the software development and technical capabilities, I'm just checking time. Our platform architecture, stylized, of course, but it looks roughly like this. So we're predominantly using enterprise grade manage blockchain services for Hyperledger Fabric, backed into IBM and Oracle. There may be gasps around the room from the Ethereum developers. That was done deliberately because when we first went to market and we thought that yes, it was a great idea to have it, fully open and transparent. I think there's been both a combination of evolution of underlying technology infrastructure, but also requirements from business. So permission chains were certainly the way that we found we could best navigate that. The world wasn't ready for full transparency. The world is evolving towards that, and I think it's been amazing for me to see in my tenure with Everledger just how much the world has turned from, oh, that's really nice to have, and that's a bit of a holy grail, 5 to 7 years ago, to now, when, how quickly can I, actually become a ticket to play and a business requirement, in some ways brought about by legislation, but actually often driven by increasing consumer awareness, demand, brand reputation, and contractual obligations and market expectations of each other. ISO compliance features for us as well. Our infrastructure services, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, Elastic, MongoDB, to support our platform and applications. We're using some good OCR capabilities, Google Vision and AWS TextRact APIs to ingest a lot of data. And part of our value, it turns out, is actually in taking industries that previously had no harmonious data narrative or consistent structures and helping them to have almost a single standard logic around data schemas and the presentation. So capture compliance once and replay it out many times over to different parties. Those sorts of efficiencies are really valuable. Integrations with IoT sensors, NFC technology, and here we're helping to secure assets that can tell the story of whether or not they are in play. So is that bottle opened or not? Has it been tampered? Has the cork, if it's corked, been plundered? Has the cap been uncapped? Has the item been previously claimed? So these kinds of things do support consumers to understand, is this its first sale? Is it new? Is it resold? And what state of health is it in? Layer 2 solutions are in play for NFTs. So that's a big and burgeoning space, as I'm sure you're all very close to and aware of. And production grade containerization and orchestration with Docker and Kubernetes sitting there for us as well. Okay, in terms of a blockchain network, these are smaller consortium structures, typically of known parties in the mix, and we have off-chain, on-chain databases relating with data in transit using TLS encryption protocols, and really we have to. Some things we do that for is for efficiency. Might be the heavyweights of media files that we actually just want to economize on for performance, but some of it is also about being careful not to include personal information, etc., on chain, but having persistent links and relationships with off-chain environments, using proof of authority as well with different network partners, and not requiring all partners to have a node. That is not for everyone. So there's different structures and architectures depending on what's required. So when it comes to our technical infrastructure, one object, one identifier, to really make sure that we have that persistent relationship, and that is a nested set of identifiers. A bag of rough stones broken down into a single rough stone, cut and polished, then set in a jewelry piece with twin sapphires next to it. So you're talking about sort of the aggregation and disaggregation of assets, and we have to track each of those at different object levels. APIs, all APIs are supporting read-write operations using RESTful protocols. Adapters, we support multiple data adapters, you can see here, and DevOps, continuous integration, continuous deployment using Bitbucket pipelines. Obviously a lot of dynamic management to ensure everything is up and running smoothly, and managing that at a cloud level as well. Data processing, there's a lot that happens in our engine room to validate all incoming data. Just because on-chain doesn't make it good or verifiable. So a lot of work takes place in preparation activities with customers well before APIs are plugged in to support document imaging, processing. Third-party audits and verifications take place at this point as well. It's no good to any of us if there's rubbish on-chain or if things are unsubstantiated on-chain. Still worth calling out, though, that a lot of these guys have never done this before. And so this is a space of learning and growth for many industries. How do I tell the story of provenance well? How do I provide that data? I've never been asked to capture that data before, or to take care of business in this way. So a lot of it is our customers working towards specific claims and things that they want to take to market. Analytics, we have that sort of running on a lot of our different deployments, of course, filterable dashboards, etc. One key thing people do like to know is, where are these things in the world? And are they selling or being traded or being tapped or being engaged with where I thought they would be? And that's very interesting and enlightening stuff. And front-end technologies, mobile first really has predominated for us. Responsive desktop web apps, etc. And I've talked already about the intelligent labeling. A little bit about our microservices architecture here. Simply, we just need to be Legoed well to develop small and independent services communicating over well-defined APIs. I'm going to keep moving because I think we're running out of time. Yes, ISO certification, we're agile, we use Scrum practices. The key bits I want to tell you about today with these, which is lessons learned. So key bits for us is that organising the people and the businesses is often way harder, takes way longer, it's way more complicated than actually delivering on the tech stack. And the tech stack is not simple, but that always takes longer than we expect. Production builds always take longer than anyone thinks it will as well. Centrally, a lot of time is spent obviously on architecture and tech and how can this work, etc. But the rubber hits the road on customer validation. So have you validated the concept? Have you validated the proof of concept? Has it been piloted? Is it structured for deliberate learning and outcomes? And things are rarely straightforward. You might have the best vision for what you think is relevant in the market that doesn't always stack up with customers. Let me just stop right there. I could see some messages. I think we're probably out of time, Peter, so I'll move on.
That's okay. So I know I've got a question or two, but are there other questions from the audience? Okay, all right, I'll ask my one. So look, I've known people who've been involved with Everledger over quite a long time, and I know we were talking about moving to Ethereum actually back in 2017, and it's this, we've got this infrastructure already, and so it doesn't, anyway, I guess that's in the past, and you were very correct in saying the permissioned Ethereum did not exist at that time, not well, and so, but now you've got this requirement for public and making information public. So what do? Do you try and migrate infrastructure and everything to Ethereum? Do you do cross-chain somehow? What is your thought, what's the thought bubble on how that's going to work potentially?
Look, I think at a principle level, we've always believed in interoperability, integrations, and that's just been a fundamental design principle. So not making one-way doors. Now, inevitably you build around a tech stack, you have employees who are equipped in that, and you do bank into those, but we're also constantly looking at the what is out there and how does that then fit and is relevant, and that's, I think, certainly showing up for us in the NFT world, because it's great to have some of these provenance records banked into these private chains, but at the point at which you want tradability, you could still you can still anchor those together. You can have, you can coexist that technology to solve those problems. And at the end of the day as well, and this really comes at another key principle, we don't actually exist for blockchain. We exist to solve customer problems and to solve market problems. And insofar as the tooling supports us to do that in new and innovative ways, and certainly blockchain has, that's excellent, But at the end of the day, we will continue to evolve as to exactly where the market needs us to be.
Yeah, completely makes sense. I mean, yeah, you're about product and not about tech. I mean, tech delivers the product. Are there other questions? No. Okay, I'm sure everyone fully understands the talk and is going to walk away with full of knowledge. So Dan and Nils, why don't you take over and tell us about Caleb and Brown?
Yeah, no problem, guys. So my name's Nils. I'm the senior broker here at Caleb & Brown. And
I'm Dan Johnson. I'm the product manager at Caleb & Brown.
yeah, so to give you guys a bit of an introduction, so Caleb & Brown is a personalized cryptocurrency brokerage service. We started back in 2016, and we've effectively built this business off the back of personal relationships, recognizing that there was a missing piece in what was a very difficult market, particularly back in 2016, to navigate if you were new, and to have someone there to constantly hold your hand throughout your cryptocurrency journey. And it's been through these relationships we've built our company to where it is now. So to give you guys a much more detailed overview of our service. So from the moment of signing up, you were assigned to a certain broker, so one of the guys in the brokerage team, with contact from the onboarding team the entire way through your process. You get a call straight away. So our service is effectively focused on people. It's people first. So if you need absolutely anything from us, you can call your broker at any time of day. We're available 24 hours to answer any of your questions, whether it's information, how do I use my wallets? How do I get, from my coins from Ethereum over to a Binance Smart Chain asset? Anything you need, we can basically help you cover.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Nils. So as Nils said, basically we have been this white glove brokerage service for the history of our time. We realized for us to keep offering the service that is kind of really in demand around the world as more and more people kind of become aware of, I guess, just the efficacy of blockchain and crypto and all those kind of good things that happen. And especially as regulation now is really kind of knocking on the door, we realize the opportunities there to really help kind of shepherd people, maybe not to the promised land, but, definitely into a better way of interfacing with this kind of stuff. So I myself have been with the company for almost 6 months now. And over the last probably 12 months, the business has been going through a bit of kind of a digital kind of revolution internally. And that's not to say, obviously, that we weren't tech savvy before that. Obviously, to interface with these kind of things, you really have to be ahead of the curve. But our goal now is really to basically productize effectively this service we offer so that we can basically offer it to more people around the world. So I want to talk to you a bit about kind of the journey we're on at the moment as we go from this real traditional broker first service to still a service first product, but just how we kind of shape that. So if you can think about a brokerage and all those kind of things, there's quite a few aspects to it. So there's obviously, how a customer might interface with us, which traditionally has been through, email, phone calls, chat, that kind of stuff. We then have the ability for them to then request trades and swaps and all that kind of stuff, which again is a service that we can provide. And then the layer down there, when you think about our account management team and our trading team, that's where a lot of the magic happens and a lot of the real value that we provide comes into it. Because it's very easy for me as someone to go to an exchange, see a price, swipe my credit card and buy something. But it's quite challenging for me to know I'm getting the best price. Is that actually a safe bet for me to make? All those kind of things. And so part of our service is really offering that. And then if you go down a layer from there, it's custody, it's security, it's making sure that your digital asset is always safe. I think recently I saw a story of some guy who, basically put life savings into Bitcoin, and then basically put it onto what he thought was a cold wallet. When he went to basically pull out, he realized that actually been compromised at the lifespan of it, and he had lost, and someone had drained his wallet. So obviously the service we want to provide is to make sure people have absolute trust and security when they leave their tokens and investments with us to make sure that's protected. And we use bleeding edge technology to basically ensure that we are keeping those assets in the most secure way possible. So that's a very quick rundown of kind of how it works today. And I'll step you through a bit of the roadmap, if you like, of what exactly a brokerage service wants to try and offer to the world. And so we start off, as most people would think of, like an app. So our hero product we have in beta right now, we call it the CMB portal. It's basically a web interface that allows any one of our customers in the program so far to basically log in securely and basically look at their current holdings, look at some various news that might be tailored to their interests and things like that. And so right now, it's a very, very simple kind of product. And every week, we are releasing new kind of functionality based on feedback from customers and our own kind of internal roadmap. So one common thing we see as a brokerage is someone may have a personal account, they may have a trust account, they may have a business account. And how do we make sure that that is only accessible to them and potentially to people they trust? And so we solve kind of problems that allow people to access various accounts. And again, these may sound like quite simple solutions in the broad scheme of things. But, if you think about the very first iPhone, it didn't support copy and paste. That was, in version 3 or 4. So, we're really starting at the ground and building up. But the benefit of that means that we can actually ensure that at no point through this process do we drop off that incredible service that we've become known for. Because from our perspective, as Nils said, the thing that our point of difference has always been that's customer service. And so we could blaze a trail and build the sexiest thing, but if our users can't use it, what good is it? And to Louise's point as well, we can pontificate about actual technologies and that kind of stuff until the cows come home. But ultimately for us, it's delivering a product that is going to impact the lives of our users and hopefully make it easier for them to access this kind of world. So the app itself, as I said, is in beta. We're hoping to offer that to all our customers in Q2. And so anyone that then signs up moving forward with us in Q2 of this year will be able to get access to that straight away. And like I said, every fortnight we're shipping new features. So there's things coming around the corner. Like I said, multi-accounts. We've got the idea of referral partners and whatnot. And that's a really valuable thing for us. And so that's kind of the consumer app. But one thing I wanted to talk about as well is also the layer below, which is kind of the secret sauce. Now you can imagine if you wanted to go and set up a bank, if you wanted to set up any kind of financial business now, there's a lot of off-the-shelf products today that you can go, there's ERPs and that kind of stuff that is suited for your business case. But one thing I've learned recently as I've walked into this kind of finance or fintech world is, and as everyone might know, you can think of a dozen coins that actually go well below the 2 decimal places. So that they might have 6, 7, 8, 9 decimal places. Now, modern accounting software and that kind of stuff will often round these up or round them to 2 decimal places. So instantly, as soon as we step into this field, we're presented with a problem that hasn't been solved before. And so we have to go and find a new way of doing it. And through that is kind of opportunity, because again, we don't have to just settle for the off the shelf. We can kind of take a bit, add a bit ourselves and what have you. So the kind of the engine room of the business that we're really working on now as a product team is what we hope is going to really help us. So as a brokerage service, we're not an exchange. We don't want to just become an exchange. We actually want to interface with as many exchanges as possible that are reputable, they're going to have suitable liquidity, all those kind of really important things that investors want and our customers want and expect. And so we're building basically from our perspective, this cutting edge kind of interface that will allow our trading team, our account management team to, at a moment's notice, be able to put through a trade for the best price with the best liquidity and all those kind of things, and really remove that human error from the whole equation. And again, as the service we provide, we've got to make sure that human error isn't there, because what difference would that be for our customers if it was? So that's a really interesting product we're working on. And it's actually quite funny because it's an internal product, and we're always, obviously, many of us here are crypto natives, we're always looking at ways to bring Web3 into our own development practices. So we're actually going to be using a ConsenSys product for authentication, which you may know as MetaMask. And so our trading team will be able to actually securely access this internal product with the MetaMask authentication. And so that's just like a very, very small way that we can start scratching the surface of this within our own product team. And that product will then go on to help us with various custody things, various auditing things, to again make sure all this kind of stuff is readily available for our customers. And then that basically kind of gets us to once we get beyond that bit, we're then in a really strong position to actually ensure that we can offer our customers this incredible service. We know we've got our own internal engine that's ensuring we get best prices, there's really good custody, all that kind of security is there. And once we've kind of landed that, and we've you know, as Nils touched on before, we've now got offices in UK and as well as Australia, so we can offer that 24-hour service. That's when we can start looking further afield and start to really understand the opportunities that might be beyond what we currently are today. And we don't want to go into too much, we want to give away everything. But I think from my perspective as well, this is an industry that's so new, there's just, you know, it's absolutely ripe for opportunity. And one thing I really resonated with the Everledger talk was the fact that there's a fascinating book called Cradle to Cradle, and that envisions the world where you basically you don't have a cradle to grave mentality. You kind of keep iterating. A product becomes a nutrient, becomes another product, and that's a really good example of how, you know, Everledger is taking this bleeding edge technology and actually solving other problems. And I kind of see us fulfilling the same thing, but more in a financial world, because that's where we're born from. That's what kind of forged in fire. And so we really want to be able to offer products and tools to people out there that gives them that kind of freedom, gives them that incentive, and also make sure they're safe. Because ultimately, if we've learned anything from the last kind of 40 years of finance, it can be a tumultuous world. And so if we can offer that security there, that's a really powerful thing. And that probably wraps up all we want to chat about today. But if there's any more technical questions, or anyone wants to know about the tech stack or what underpins our brokerage service, by all means, sing out and drop it in the comments.
So I wonder, I know I've got a few questions. I've actually started jotting them down here. But so you mentioned MetaMask, but then it did sound like you've got custody of the keys. So do you have custody of the private keys, or does the user have custody of the private keys? How does that work?
So actually in regards of MetaMask, that's actually an internal tool. So that's basically just a way for us to actually authenticate and log in. So in that case, it's not a private key kind of thing. When it comes to general custody for the rest of our customers, we use a service called Fireblocks, which ensures that we basically have kind of separation. So there's no access to those private keys. All right.
And so does that Fireblocks thing give you, say, multi-sig or something, so that, you know, like one broker can't, say, by mistake, walk off with $100 million?
Yeah, exactly. There's multi-signatories on there, so that things like that can't happen.
Exactly. Okay,
cool. So not that it would happen, but I often wonder, like in a, you know, like a small, say you've got a company of 50 people, and say at some point you do a downsize and you've got a, like, say, a 4 or 5, and you were downsizing to, you know, 2 of the people being downsized were part of the multi-sig. How would you manage it? I mean, I know I'm throwing out a crazy situation here, but, you know, I mean, because you hear about these things where people get quite acrimonious, and then they go, oh, just a sec, you're some of the people in the multi-sig.
Nils, I might let you feel that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we do have processes in place for that, aside from just not letting those people get into a car together too often. But yes, no, there are recovery processes in place in the event that were to happen.
Okay, well, that's good. And look, I've already asked 2 questions, and there are a lot of other people on this call. So I'll be quiet for a sec.
I saw a question about Fireblocks and then using MPC. Was that from Bo?
Yeah. Just are you guys using the multi-party computation product that they offer, or multi-sig?
I think we're using the multi-sig.
Multi-sig, yeah.
Cool. We just met with them, so I'm interested.
Fantastic. Yeah, they've been
yeah, they just paid us a visit the other day, actually.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, they've been really good partners of ours, and we look forward to building some really cool things with them.
Awesome. Nice work, guys.
Fantastic. Cheers.
Yeah. And Sly's thrown something into the chat too. Sly, do you want to talk through your question, or shall I ask it?
Oh,
So it's very quiet.
very quiet there.
Yeah, Sly, your microphone's not working too well. I'll read it out. Where do you see value generation in blockchain? For example, shares generate value through company activity. Hedge market providers generate value through providing insurance.
Yeah, exactly right. So, I mean, look, so I come from an equities background myself too. So obviously when you're purchasing these tokens, you are not purchasing, say, the share of an underlying company, which, you'll receive revenue from those activities. But a lot of the value we see in the space comes from the utility of what's being built on these blockchains. So, Bitcoin and Ethereum, for example, Bitcoin finally having some, much more global adoption just over the last year, becoming legal tender was a massive step forward for the industry. Even as we see regulation coming into the space, that is a good thing. It allows larger players, large institutions to be able to enter the market with the capital that they have to deploy. But yeah, that's where a lot of that value comes from, is in the utility of these assets. So even though you might not be able to receive any revenue that these protocols might be generating, that utility, as we've seen in crypto, ends up being reflected in the price of the tokens that you do hold.
And Chaminda has put in, as a broker, do you provide advice to customers to which token to buy and sell and when?
So we are not currently licensed to provide direct financial advice. However, what that extends to as being a broker is I can provide you with all of the information in the world about the assets that you're looking at. Oftentimes clients come in, and as I said, being such a personal service, a lot of these people the clients that we have need help navigating this space, whether it's simple things like avoiding scams, someone sent me a link, do I click it? Things like that. And that is where a lot of the information and the value that we can provide comes from.
There's even like, I have sat across quite a few just conversations between brokers and their customers. And that value is really that guiding hand, in the sense of just being able to help with those kind of more technical questions about how the things actually work, less so much the advice that comes with which to buy here or which to buy there.
Yeah, and I'd probably say to that as well, when people do come asking for advice, they're more asking for an understanding of what they're getting into. So oftentimes people will come to us having only been to YouTube or to say, a top 5 altcoin video and what else to buy next, but they actually don't understand what they're buying. So they'll come asking for advice. And if you can explain what those assets actually do, something will ring true, and then you can provide further sources of information or places that they can get that advice, and they can go away and actually make a very informed decision for themselves.
So I'll ask this one as well. So how's your revenue model based? Like, do you take because it's not a commission based. So I guess, how does that work?
So our fee structure, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so our fees are only on transactions. So it's a 3.5% transaction fee. So we cover all costs for withdrawals, testing amounts, everything like that. But yes, it's 3.5% on transactions.
Okay, so someone can come and get the advice and, go and do by themselves.
Exactly. We prefer a fixed fee model compared to having to go into exchange and deal with a lot of variable costs where you don't quite know. And when you're dealing with assets such as Bitcoin and Ethereum, look, the fees are going to be negligible, right? It's such a deep, liquid, heavily traded market. But the deeper you go down into the altcoin space, and particularly if you want to start trading from one altcoin to another on different mainnets or cross-chain, it can become very, very expensive for the small investor very quickly. However, with us knowing that I'm going to ask you to swap my Cardano to Theta right now, and it's 3.5% fee on the total value of that trade. We preferred that model. We think it's just much more transparent and easy for our clients.
So you use the exchanges like Binance. So Binance has a fee as well. So let's say Binance has a 6.5 and 3.5 added now. It's basically, let's say I'm the customer, charge a fee of close to 10% in that case.
Sorry, so what do you mean?
No, so I can jump on that. The fee structure doesn't stack. So basically, if the exchange that we may go to is never a fee that is then borne by the customer, that's absorbed within basically Caleb & Brown as a service. So the fee that we charge on that trade is the only fee you'll ever see, as long as you're trading with your CMB broker and the CMB team.
And so we trade across, obviously we have corporate accounts with the major exchanges. We also trade across a number of OTC desks throughout the world. And basically, when you go to put through a trade, that goes to our trading team, who will see where the best liquidity is, where the best prices are. We obviously pay those fees. And then, as Dan was just saying, the only fee you ever see is, okay, I send $10,000. And so 3.5% of that is what will be paid to us.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
No worries, thank
No
you.
problem.
All right. So what I think we might do is flip to Charles to present ConsenSys. And then right at the end, if there are any final questions, then, maybe they can be asked then. So, yeah. So Charles, do you want to take it away?
100%. Thank you so much, Peter, for having me. I will try not to be too salesy. I know it's an engineering group and meetup here. So let me just pull my the deck I prepared, and we will talk about ConsenSys in a minute. Here we go. Super.
And I should probably introduce you as being the you're head of Asia Pacific for ConsenSys.
Yeah,
That's pretty much your title these days.
absolutely. So Charles, born in France, living in Hong Kong for the past 15 years. I joined ConsenSys 3 years ago to found the Hong Kong office for ConsenSys, and I lead customer-facing activities in Asia Pacific. So we have essentially sales team, professional services team, which are based and spread over our offices in Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, and Japan. So there is multiple groups within Asia Pacific belonging to ConsenSys, between the protocol groups, some of the product groups, as well as R&D groups. And I'm more into, as I mentioned earlier, customer-facing activities. Yeah. And I'll let you know maybe in a few minutes what we do more here. I'll go quickly, so maybe we can get some questions and answers in a candid way just after that. So essentially at ConsenSys, you probably know us through some of the products we launched on the market years ago now, and essentially we've got 3 main audiences at ConsenSys: the developers, for and foremost. Then we assist a lot of enterprises and governments into their digital asset journey in general and Web3 transition, as well as the end users, mostly via MetaMask. And what we do essentially is abstracting the complexity of blockchain systems and smart contract, and make it consumable via API for the most part. So it helps the developers and the builders to get more healthy and stronger infrastructure. Over the years, we've been working with multiple industries and leading customers and partners. So I guess the logos are talking for themselves here, but you see a group of regulators, a group of central banks, some traditional finance, main top players such as SocGen, Fidelity, or some others. You see as well some crypto native companies such as Coinbase or MakerDAO. And we work as well with essentially co-building consortiums, so groups of companies. So two illustrations here are Comgo in the world of oil trading, where 15 companies are essentially co-building a blockchain business network with ConsenSys for their trading activities. And in a similar way for ConsenSys, which is also a global consortium for agricultural commodities trading. A more recent example of consortium is the project Carbon Place, which started out of Australia together with NAB, trading some carbon credits globally. And this consortium is now growing much bigger with the support of ConsenSys. We announced a few weeks ago our Series D funding round, which essentially added 450 million of funding to ConsenSys as a group to keep growing our products and building larger teams. What's interesting here beyond the funding number is the illustration of the growth of our space via some kind of proxy to the space, which is MetaMask. MetaMask is really a leading crypto wallet for end users, for developers, and today we are celebrating 30 million monthly average users on MetaMask. And maybe some other takeaway is to see how strong are the endorsements from the overall investors community on the technology and support to ConsenSys. So you see here SoftBank investing in ConsenSys. You see some large hedge funds such as Marshall Wace, big banks like HSBC, Coinbase is investing, Animoca in the world of GameFi. So there is really some convergence and very strong support from the industry, and we're grateful for that. Some other key numbers. Truffle is a product of ConsenSys, if you haven't realized yet. So number one, development environment for Ethereum developers with more than 4.7 million downloads. ConsenSys Diligence helps with security audit of hundreds of projects. Infura is really a strong base for the ConsenSys stack, helping connectivity with the mainnet, with IPFS, but also multiple layer 2s from Optimism, Arbitrum, and Polygon. ConsenSys Quorum, as well as MetaMask, growing at 30 million plus users now. With a new version of MetaMask, you see here two logos: the traditional retail version of MetaMask coming with the orange color fox, but there is also a new version called MetaMask Institutional, which essentially allows you to use a similar version of MetaMask as the retail one, but with some enhancement for institutional traders, such as the direct connections with your regulated custody, amongst other things. Maybe my last slide, so we can have some questions and answer and a chat around that. Here is an illustration, and I'll go full screen. It's probably going to be better. Here is an illustration of the ConsenSys stack. For you to kind of picture how the different bricks of software within ConsenSys fit into each other's. So if we start from the base here of the stack at ConsenSys, we've got really, I would say, two subgroups of services and product at ConsenSys. So on my right side of the screen, there is Infura, essentially assisting all kind of projects and initiatives going mainnet. So where we give access to essentially crafting transactions on the Ethereum mainnet or layer 2s, as well as access to Ethereum data in general and IPFS. So that's really the mainnet type of services. On the left side of my screen, we've got the private blockchain space. So as you know, you can always deploy a private network with an Ethereum client, and it's really meaningful in many use cases, in the financial space, for example, such as CBDCs and some others. So in this space, we've got ConsenSys Quorum. It comes with additional professional services and products such as a private key manager for very complex setups, mixing on-prem and various complexities coming with private key management, solutions as well, and adds-on for privacy, as well as enterprise support in general. So once you get this base of network, should it be a mainnet deployment or hybrid or private network, then we go to the application layer. So before reaching the application itself, we've got this beautiful piece of software. Really have a look. I think it's free of access for 60 or 90 days for anyone to download and experiment with. It's this piece of software called Codify Orchestrate. It's a middleware, really helping you to essentially do all the heavy lifting and connecting your application level with the blockchain, should it be a private blockchain, an hybrid blockchain, or the mainnet or a layer 2. So this piece of software, Codify Orchestrate, is extremely popular, part of I will say the vast majority of our deliveries. And then on the top of this middleware, we've got the Codify Assets family, which comes with different subgroups such as Codify Asset for tokenization of asset payments, staking, compliance, workflow, and activate, as well as a new addition to the application layer at ConsenSys called Treum, which is essentially an NFT engine for projects. And then going up the stack, we've got enablement for developers with Truffle and ConsenSys Diligence, and the wallet part of the ConsenSys stack with the retail version of MetaMask, as well as the institutional version of MetaMask. So all of this help us together with a professional services group. Professional services in APAC represent about 40 people in APAC and 100 plus people globally, essentially helping and supporting enterprises, government, regulators, central banks into building with those products and really delivering the solutions. I'll pause here and take questions if you have any. Feel free to ask anything Candid. Happy to take your questions.
Yeah,
If we
go ahead.
If we don't have questions yet, I'm happy to give you a little bit of an introduction to one initiative within MetaMask, which is probably, in my opinion, very interesting in terms of engineering. So I'll take the assumptions you're all familiar with MetaMask, and there is this program within MetaMask which is starting called MetaMask Flask. And essentially, it's enabling developers to build on the top of MetaMask and bring in plug in with your own API to essentially create a very smooth experience and a smooth onboarding into your Web3 applications for users. So it's kind of the early days of some kind of marketplace or ecosystem built on top of MetaMask. What is very interesting for many developers and entrepreneurs is to essentially leverage the audience of MetaMask with more than 30 million users today. There is a pool of users which is very attractive for many, and MetaMask really wanted to illustrate our commitment to Web3 and composability, building this extra feature called MetaMask Flask. So it's the early days. There is already some developers in the community working on this, but essentially, as I was mentioning earlier, it enables you to build this kind of mini apps on the top of MetaMask and creating a more native bridge between your application and the wallets of MetaMask. So people are building mini apps related to identity, mini apps related to NFTs, to onboarding in GameFi or video games. So plenty of activity already on this space of co-development on MetaMask. Happy to break here.
So that actually, I'm going to ask a question. So for MetaMask Flask and Snaps, have we had interesting applications already created by people, or is that still something that do you think people are working on?
So it's the early days of Flask, but there is indeed quite a few people which are already active on the stack. We haven't seen yet official releases. I think there is a program which will come in the coming months. But you can see there, and I'm happy to share the deck with everyone later on. You start to see developers essentially starting to connect and create their own apps. Here it's an illustration on how to connect Filecoin and start to create much more advanced file sharing use cases on the top of MetaMask, and building this kind of mini apps on the top of it. So early days, to come back to your questions, but definitely an active part of the community. People have been using MetaMask, not thinking it was yet ready to be part of their own stack, but it's definitely a composable tool available for all. There is a demo here which I'm happy to share later on.
And I know the question that everyone's probably got on their lips as well is, so where's ConsenSys?
I don't know. I don't know. The MetaMask token. The MetaMask token, is it?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
So tell me what was the question? Sorry. Usually people ask me Charles, how about the MetaMask token? Is it coming? Do you think it will be like this or that?
No. My question was, where are we going? But actually, we do have a real question from Dimitri, and we've got one from Sly. So So Sly initially asked how many people are in ConsenSys, and I said 757, of which 40 to 50 are in Australia. And then he said, what would make it, would that make it the largest blockchain company in the world in terms of employees? And he says, he knows about IBM, but IBM's got a lot of people working on a lot of other things as well. So, do you think we're the largest blockchain company in the world, or would Binance or Coin, one of these others be larger as well?
In my opinion, it's not a beauty contest, but if we precise the definition, so ConsenSys is certainly a large organization, and maybe the more appropriate descriptions will be one of the world's largest blockchain engineering company. I think the number of employees, I mean, we cannot benchmark a crypto exchange versus ConsenSys. ConsenSys is bringing pure engineering to the space. That's what it makes the company very unique, whereas maybe exchanges are essentially operators consuming a lot of human resources and not necessarily bringing a lot of software to the world in general. So probably one of the largest blockchain engineering company without any doubt.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. So the question from Dimitri is, when do you expect MetaMask Institutional to go live? Will it require KYC to use?
So MMI, MetaMask Institutional for short, is actually live. So if you want to try it today, you can. So let me switch presentation, if that's okay. I will just give you a quick presentation, so you get a fully and detailed answer. Okay, excellent. So MetaMask is live indeed. The big difference between MetaMask Retail and MetaMask Institutional is that MetaMask Institutional is essentially, it's not a hot wallet only anymore. It's essentially allowing you to connect directly to regulated custodians. And that's very important in the world of DeFi and institutional DeFi. So you can still connect to multiple DeFi services, but on the back end, when you craft your transaction, the transaction will be signed directly from a regulated custodian. And that's really what brings the extra step in terms of security. So there is 3 different services within MMI. One of them is essentially transacting within multiple networks, but we have also integrated codified compliance within MetaMask Institutional. So it allows you essentially to get an opinion on your transactions before you essentially confirm the transactions from a compliance perspective. So before you go and deploy on Maker, or before you go and deploy on Compound, or if you go yield farming, you usually expose yourself to a pool of assets. Maybe you join a DEX as a liquidity provider, and when you're regulated, you need to make sure you're not trading aside some possibly tainted money. So what we do is we essentially integrate within your major trading tool, that is MetaMask, a compliance tool which will essentially scan the pool where you're going to deploy and give you a comment about, is there any activity you should be aware of, and maybe something which will make this trade not acceptable. So there is this compliance aspect. We also have the same, I will say, aggregation of DEX's functionality within MMI to allow you to essentially design your trade and split your trade between different trading venues to get the best execution, with also a fee structure which is much more competitive within the world of institutional traders. There is as well the integration for the institutional version of MetaMask, and the integration with a dashboard and monitoring to allow you to understand your investments within multiple chains and multiple wallets, as well as monitoring and being able to report your gas consumptions, as well as your yield at the end of each day or at the end of each hour. So when you spend time with crypto trading firms, you realize that more and more of them are struggling with their reporting, and MetaMask is really spending time in deploying additional features to make sure that all these funds can essentially report the way they need to on their activity. So calculating the gas fees or yield being generated anywhere. So you can connect to your custodian in a very similar way. Today we are connected with BitGo, Cactus, as well as Credo, which is a decentralized MPC. But there is additional custodian framework and companies which are added every quarter or so. And then you craft your transaction, and from this transaction, you will eventually sign the transactions from the custodian itself. So here we have a demo custody, which we call the Jupiter custody. But essentially, you craft your transaction, then you're sent back to your custodian, and within your custodian, you can have multi-sig, for example. So I'll stop here and take questions if you have any. But to come back to your questions, you don't require KYC for MetaMask Institutional. If you are using existing custodians such as BitGo or Cactus, there is certain occasions if you are using, for example, a decentralized custodian. In this case, we will proceed with a KYC with ConsenSys in order to identify yourself. But KYC is definitely coming in the space, and institutions are eager to trade in a well-maintained trading environment. I'll pause here.
Yeah, Dimitri, do you have any follow-up questions? I'm thinking the answer is no. Okay. Oh no, thanks. Oh no, one more question. Do you have
One more
plans for add non-EVM chains to MetaMask? Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So non-EVM, so we're not even just worried about other EVM blockchains, but I guess what, Solana or something like that, I assume, or Avalanche.
I think MetaMask has a mission to connect the best way possible people to Web3 in general. For now, I guess the teams are extremely busy with covering the multiple variations of EVM's chains, where there is a vast majority by an order of magnitude of the activity. But I don't think it will be surprising when the time comes to see MetaMask connecting you to non-EVM. But the priority today is really the EVM world. It's again where there is the most activity. So there is sometimes very vocal users asking for some other chains which are non-EVM, and that's fine. But the team try to stay focused and deliver the best connectivity within the layer 1 of Ethereum, making sure we get the wide access also to all the different layer 2. But today with MetaMask by default, you can connect with all the EVM. So if you want to go on Avalanche, if you want to go on Gnosis chain, if you want to go on Harmony, you know how to essentially connect your existing MetaMask. So there is a lot of flexibility with the product itself. So beyond MetaMask itself, you probably want to capture that a big part of the MetaMask infrastructure sits on the top of Infura. So you can, with MetaMask, you can connect via Infura to multiple chains, but you can also connect to some others. And I think when the time comes, there will be access to some other non-EVM chains.
Sounds good. So thank you very much for your talk, Charles. It's been very interesting, and I've worked at ConsenSys for almost 5 years and I've learned stuff. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So before we go back to more questions, I'm going to present what the forthcoming talks are, and then, yep, that should be the right one. Come on, Zoom, select the right window. Yep. All right. Cool. Okay, everyone. So in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to talk about Ethereum gas usage and how to optimize your applications to use less gas. Then 2 weeks after that, we've got some lawyers coming along, intellectual property lawyers, to talk about NFTs and copyright, moral rights and legal implications, and really about how it actually works from a legal perspective, from a law perspective. 2 weeks after that, we've got Mikhail, who's going to be talking about the Ethereum merge and tell us about how the execution chain and the beacon chain are going to come together. Adrian is going to talk about checkpoint sync, which is a sync that is used in beacon chain. And I still have I still know that I've promised that we'd do a Solidity security talk in June or July, or sometime. So that'll be June or July or something like that. And I think I skipped over this slide, which is there are all the socials. So this will be on YouTube. And there's a Slack workspace you can join. If you're watching this on YouTube, please join the meetup group. There is example code. And finally, there's a formal methods reading group. So if you're really into formal methods, please join the Slack workspace. And from there, you can join the reading group, and they'll read a technical paper about formal methods each 2 weeks. So that's enough of me sharing. And so I think we've got an extra question here. Really looking to the Solidity security talk. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, we'll get to that Solidity security talk. I'll probably try and convince someone from Diligence to appear to do that one. But all right. So does anyone have any questions for our speakers today?
I have one question for you, Peter, if you don't mind. Can we see your full T-shirt? I can see I'm a cryptologist. What is your T-shirt about?
So I used to work with some defense people, and this is an NSA T-shirt. We were helping them out with an issue they had. And so it's actually from, they've got a, you wouldn't believe it, but the NSA have got a gift shop. And so, yeah, no, but actually they've got a cryptographic and cryptology museum, and which is really interesting. It was really annoying because I didn't go to it. But I've learned all sorts of things I'm not going to talk about on this call about security at the NSA, which is actually pretty funny. But no, needless to say, the big building you always see from on TV where they've got it, taking it from the air, didn't go into that building. No one, non-NSA people don't go in that building. So there's another visitor center, which is still, armed guards, high fences and the whole lot. But anyway, it was very interesting. But yeah, so this is I'm not a cryptologist and I break codes. And the funniest thing about the T-shirt is actually, no, I'm the one who's more the writer of the algorithms and not the breaker of the algorithms. So if you know me, then you know that the actual T-shirt's wrong anyway. So there you go.
Thank you so much.
Look, I think we're done for the day. And so thank you again, Louise, Dan and Nils and Charles for delivering your talks today. They were all very interesting. And I'll be excited to see where all of our companies are in another year or 5 years' time. It's going to be interesting to see where everything goes. So thank you for your time and have a great week, everyone. Talk later.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
See ya.
Thank you.
Everyone.